Guillermo del Toro's latest movie, The Shape of Water, is opening in limited release this weekend, but does it hold water? We'll let you know right here on Screen Junkies News. Hello, I'm Dan Murrell.
And I'm Roth Cornet.
And we are talking about The Shape of Water, the latest from, this word gets thrown around a lot, but I think it does apply. From I was going to say the visionary director, Guillermo del Toro. And this is what I love about him so much, was no matter, some movies are better and some movies are worse, but he always has such a unique and special vision. And this movie, I think, has one of his most unique visions.
I agree. Didn't mean to jump on your tails there, Dan.
That's
I was hoping you were going to say auteur. We were going to do a little simpatico thing. But I think that he is that as well. Mm-hmm. In terms of particularly this film and some of his others, like Pan's Labyrinth, you can tell he is driving the train. I think he always is. Mm-hmm. But with little interference. It is so clear. The story is so clear. The tone is so clear. This is very much a dark fairy tale. And again, I mentioned Pan's Labyrinth, which is my favorite of his films.
Yeah.
Pan's Labyrinth. And this one is the most like that in terms of the feel of it, the fact that it is a fairy tale, that these characters are, as a result, archetypal and big, and glorious in that way. But what he's able to do, oh, look at that. I mean, I want to literally swim in that movie.
Yeah.
But what he's able to do is humanize them so much as well with these little details. Like even just the fact of this woman's routine that we see.
Yeah. And it's got that edge to it. I mean, one of the things that makes Guillermo del Toro so distinctive, and not just a stylistic director, is everything has that darkness to it. And this movie has a lot of that. Michael Shannon, perhaps Hollywood's greatest sociopath.
Yes.
On film, not in real life, don't know the man, but man, can he play just a evil personified, and he is that in this movie. But I love, the idea of, like you said, it is a fairy tale. So these characters are very broad in their in their traits, but they are also very specifically drawn. Richard Jenkins plays a character who, in a lesser movie or in one that wasn't as more thought out, would have just been the neighbor, the friendly neighbor. Oh. And he could have performed the same plot functions. But Guillermo del Toro brings so much more to these movies, and that character has layers. And it's not just that a character is doing something. You understand why these characters are doing what they do. They show you reasons why Michael Shannon is the way he is, why Michael Stuhlbarg's character, MVP, by the way, maybe of 2017, this, Call Me By Your Name, Fargo on FX, like, the dude's crushing it, great actor, but why he does what he does. All of these, these characters take the actions that you might expect in a story like this, but what Guillermo del Toro does is he brings his point of view and his vision to it, and you understand who they are, not just what they're doing. And I feel like a lot of movies lose track of that. You see characters doing things, but you don't understand who they are and why they're doing them.
Sure, and I would agree. Like he really is able to add depth to each of these characters, even though they are playing a particular function that they need to play in order for the fairy tale to work. Mm-hmm. But I will say too, in terms of the color palette, which you mentioned, it's stunningly beautiful. It is a little bit murky, and it feels like, and I love this about it, a lot of the film takes place at night. Mm-hmm. Certain aspects take place during the day, but it always feels a little bit like you're looking through water. Yeah. It's that perspective of being in water. So even when you're not literally in water during the film, you feel as though you're immersed in it, which helps draw you into it that much more visually. It's giving you the cue of where you're meant to be, and what you're meant to be thinking about. The other thing too is that this creature, and we'll talk about the creature quite a bit, Doug Jones in a suit, is remarkable in this film.
He's the second lead in this movie.
Absolutely.
He's not just a plot device.
Not at all. And that's the thing, is that Guillermo del Toro is such a lover of monsters and creatures, and people that really do love these characters, it's a riff on the creature from the Black Lagoon, no doubt. And people that really love those characters understand that they are not just meant to be a force of, like an anonymous, amorphous force of nature, that they really do have depth.
Yeah.
And that the biggest tale from a lot of stories of monsters is who is the monster? Like the biggest aspect, the most important, crucial aspect that you should be asking yourself is who and what makes a monster. And it's about the people that feel other, and what that does to you, and how we treat the other. And he does that in a number of ways that are not subtle, but still beautifully done. Even just setting it in the midst of the Cold War, right? Where it's like, the U.S. and Russia are other to each other.
Well, and I've
said other 19 times.
That's true. Well, I'm going to say it one more time, because every protagonist in this movie is, in some ways, an other. They are outcasts. They are outcasts by society for different reasons that range from, Sally Hawkins' character is mute. She's fantastic in this movie, by the way. I don't think people appreciate the difficulty of doing a performance where you don't speak, and she doesn't in this movie.
And nor does Doug Jones.
But
they're communicating the entire time.
You know exactly what they're saying to each other. So obviously Sally Hawkins and Doug Jones, the monster and the she doesn't have a voice, so she's obviously kind of ostracized and outcast and unable to speak. But even Octavia Spencer, her character, African American. This is set in the 60s, so there's just it's tackled head on a couple of times, but it's just and again, it's what Guillermo del Toro is able to do. You just get the general sense of race relations and racial dynamics in the country in that time. And so, she is, because of her race, kind of cast out of society, at least the one that they live in this movie. And then, the neighbor, for other reasons, he's an outcast. And it's the idea of these outcasts kind of finding themselves in this situation. But it's not done in a corny way. There are no big speeches about how terrible society is. It's just the way that he's able to bring this story together and humanize these characters, that you don't need that forced dialogue or these kind of cliched situations. You just feel for them as people.
Right, and he is the consummate filmmaker in that sense, because it's all about showing, not telling, right? So there's no exposition about the nature of the culture that we find ourselves in. He just demonstrates what it is.
Yeah.
And he is also, this is a movie, to your point, with each of these characters, and then not on the nose, but sort of overtly with Sally Hawkins' character, what it is to be voiceless in society, and what it is to have a voice, and who does and who does not, and why, and who ought to have a voice,
right.
And why. And this is also very much a film, as a side note, that loves, as he does, film. There's many shots with just films, and there's a movie theater, and sort of like it is paying homage to everything that came before him in terms of this medium, which is gorgeous, and what it has, how it can impact people's lives, and how it can tell stories. And there's a little fantasy sequence within this larger fantasy that is so stunning.
So amazing.
It's a dance sequence, and you're going to love this when you see it, I hope.
I want to talk about Doug Jones and really Guillermo del Toro's approach to the creature, which when I see this, I think about what The Hobbit could have been, because I think part of what The Hobbit...
And the Dark Universe.
And the Dark Universe, too. But one of the things that I thought that The Hobbit, which Guillermo del Toro famously was going to do, and then because of contractual reason, it kept getting pushed back. He had to go do Pacific Rim. He had to drop out. But The Hobbit went CG with so many of its creatures, and I feel like there is an advantage that gives you, where you can show and render things that are beyond human comprehension. But I feel like, with very few exceptions, you lose a lot of humanity. It becomes impressive on a visual sense, but you lose the humanity. And Guillermo del Toro, I think, understood that if you do this creature CG, you lose a little bit of that, even if it's unconscious, even if it's the most beautifully rendered movie monster, the human brain, I think, still knows when it's looking at something that's not physically there. And I think he knew that if you do this creature CG, so much of this movie is reliant on the connection between these two characters, that you have to have somebody there. And it fights back against people that say, like, well, we can't do this creature. Practically, it's going to look stupid. There's not a moment where this creature looks unrealistic. I'm sure there is a mixture of CG and practical effects. That's how it should be. That's what they were meant to be.
Right.
And again, all going back to Del Toro of just, he is a director who has a vision. He knows how he wants things to look. He knows how they should be rendered. He has the vision in his head. He knows how to put it out there.
Yeah.
And I love his movies because there is no one in a world where there are so many mix and match movies where anyone could direct any other movie, and even so many are starting to look, even movies from big directors are starting to look mix and match because you fall into franchises or budgetary reasons. Anyone could have directed them. They all look the same. Guillermo del Toro is one of those directors that is just like, no one else can make or would make a movie like this except for him. You know from the first frame of this movie that this is a Guillermo del Toro film, and that's what I love about these movies. By the way, this movie also really, really good.
Yeah, and we talked about this earlier this week, that he had said his one regret was not doing the Dark Universe back in 2007 when it was offered to him. And certainly if you watch this film, you are going to get a sense of how very different that could have been than what we got initially out of that. And, there's a depth to it, and I like you, I'm a huge fan of practical effects. And I think that you're correct, that it's because it is organic, because it has the human touch to it, you do feel that in a cathartic way when you're watching. And as we've seen over the years, whether it be Gollum or whether it be the first Jurassic Park or this film now, the combination of practical and CG yields the best result, because there absolutely is CG in this. But the fact that Doug Jones is in there performing with Sally, you feel their relationship. The fact that you have that tangible sense of him allows you to empathically relate to the creature, which is what you're meant to do, because the demonstration that he's making is that we vilify what we don't understand, even if it is divine.
Yeah.
And we, in our ignorance, perhaps want to tear it down and cause pain. And so when pain is caused, we feel it with him. And to be clear, like, though they're not actually speaking, they are communicating, they're signing with each other. So there's a bit of language between them. I can't say enough about how subtly done this is, because it's a story that, like great fairy tales and like great science fiction, which we both love, reflects the world we're in. This is the water that we're in and the water that we've came from. And the more things change, the more they stay the same. But these are archetypal lessons are there that way for we need to learn them again and again and again. And I don't think there's a better time for us to think about these things than really right now. Without,
Yeah, exactly. Strong recommendation for me. Just one of the most unique films I've seen this year. And by the way, because a lot of people say, like, 2017 has been a terrible year for movies. I've seen a lot of people say this. No, 2017 has been a terrible year for blockbuster movies. 2017 has been a great. I've seen a lot of people saying, like, 2017 sucks for movies. You're not seeing the right movies, because this movie added to the pile of. I think this has been an exceptional year for movies, and there's so many that are still coming out. So if you haven't liked any of the movies that you haven't seen in 2017, I don't think you're seeing the right movies, because there are so many great movies out there right now, and there's more to come, and we will be here to review them, hopefully, as they come out. We're getting into the prestige season, and I think next week we're going to do kind of a roundup of some of the ones that are out there that you might have missed or that are opening now and going wide, because if you haven't, I can't say it enough. There are so many great movies out there. You just have to find them. And they're not all blockbusters. A lot of them are these tiny little indies. And yes, they're going to be a little bit harder to find, but they are worth it, as is The Shape of Water.
This is well worth it. I highly recommend. If it's limited this week, but then it's going to expand. So I hope it should come to a theater near you, whereas some of the other smaller films you might have to wait for VOD, and we'll talk about that next week. But this one you should be able to see, and let's go support this. This is an original film. This is what we've been asking for. This is what we've been wanting. This is a beautiful, beautiful fairy tale. I've said that as well many times, but it is.
Worth your time and worth your money.
If you like Pan's Labyrinth, you will definitely love this movie, is what I would say.
So big. I was going to say thumbs up, but you still might be able to get sued for that. I don't know. But a big recommendation from us for The Shape of Water. I'm Dan Murrell.
I'm Roth Cornet.
We'll see you next time.
Click here for more awesome Screen Junkies news and click the logo to subscribe.